I'm Gold Derby News and Features Editor Ray Richmond, and I'm welcoming Joanna Naugle, from the FX on Hulu series The Bear to our TV Editors Meet the Experts panel. Joanna, The Bear is set and shot in Chicago in an Italian beef sandwich joint that's really more pressure cooker than restaurant. It's frenetic and intense and chaotic. Did you ever find it difficult or intimidating to edit footage resulting from that pace and tone?
Yeah, I remember when I first saw the dailies, I was like, this is insane. Like, there's no clean lines. Everyone's just yelling over each other at once. But once I talked to Chris Storer, the guy who created the show, who's so talented and just understands the world of the bear and the beef so well, he was like, as we're introducing people to this world, it should feel like they're drowning. It should just be like, you're thrown into the deep end. You're all of a sudden in a kitchen with all these people who are well-intentioned, but don't really know how to communicate. And so the first episode, especially, you're supposed to just start from this point of feeling like you have no idea what's going on. It's chaos. Nobody's in charge. And throughout the first season, we try to build towards, them kind of getting their act together, getting a little bit more organized. Obviously, there's some setbacks along the way. But so many people ask, like, is it stressful editing a stressful show? And it really isn't. I mean, I definitely feed off the energy that the actors are bringing, and they do a lot of like long takes. So they have a lot of that intensity and overlap already happening on set. And then we just try to find ways to ramp it up. And I remember I would show cuts to Chris and the producers, and I'd be like, make it faster, make it faster. And it was really exciting to be able to take out basically any breath so that at any moment you hear at least two voices, sometimes three, and just making it feel like you're in the kitchen with them, listening to the chaos and kind of along for the ride.
Well, I would imagine you felt a sense of kinship with the people trapped in the claustrophobic kitchen on the show. It had kind of eerie similarities to editing in post, doesn't it?
Definitely, yes. Adam Epstein, the other editor on the show, and I always talk about how there's definitely some similarities between a post team and a team that's in the kitchen. And, you're working with tight deadlines. You're all, trying to divide and conquer, so to speak, so that everyone's kind of adding their little bit to the episode or the dish or, the night at the restaurant to make it the best it can be. So yes, we've had a lot of analogies of cooking and putting together an episode and how they can definitely overlap.
How are you sharing your cuts, Joanna? Were you talking a lot with Chris Storer directly, working remotely from home, I surmise?
Yeah, we did basically the whole season remotely. And we were doing a lot of cutting while they were on set in Chicago, which ended up being great because we were assembling different episodes. And because so much of it is shot in one location on the set, we were able to be like, we could really use some additional chopping B-roll here. Or I remember specifically there was one episode where Carmy stays late in the second episode and he's scrubbing the floor, and it's supposed to just show that he's there all hours of the night, putting blood, sweat, and tears into this place. And we were like, how can we really emphasize that? And Chris was like, well, we're still on set. Why don't I just get a couple shots of like people putting their punch cards into their little, envelopes on the way home. And that was like the perfect addition that if we hadn't been cutting, maybe we wouldn't have had the time to get that and know that it would really complete the scene. So that was like a great kind of like back and forth of, most of the time they got what they needed, but anytime we wanted to pick something up, it really made it easier. So yeah, that was one of the pros of being remote and kind of working concurrently with shooting.
In that same second episode, Joanna, you have to edit a flashback where Carmy is being abused by his boss. How intense was that process for you? It looked particularly challenging, just that segment.
Yes, that's like the most terrifying Joel McHale has ever been in his life as his boss. That was actually one of the hardest scenes to cut because the first episode is all about establishing the beef and basically showing how dysfunctional it is there. And then the beginning of the next episode is showing the opposite. The opposite in some ways, opposite in that it's one of the best restaurants in the world, clearly still very dysfunctional, but we wanted to set up a completely different atmosphere. But instead of just being like, well, the beef is slow and this other restaurant is fast, it wasn't really about the pacing. It was more about like, okay, what are the things that we can do that just make it feel so different? So making it really quiet. We added a lot of digital motion to a lot of those shots to make it feel like it was seamless. Like Chris kept describing that as like, it's a symphony and everybody is doing like exactly what they need to. And it's this like organism that's just like living and breathing seamlessly. And then of course you have this horrible tyrant come in and he just starts berating Carmy. And throughout the scene, I really tried to make it feel like Carmi was trying to focus on what he's doing. And there's just this little like, demon on his shoulder who's distracting him. So a lot of times I would like cut away before Carmi finished what he was doing. I tried to cut around Carmi's blinks also to just make it feel like way more like heightened, like, oh, he's clearly just so uncomfortable. He can't even like, show any vulnerability, close his eyes, or, he can't do anything that feels like a normal functioning human because this guy is literally trying to ruin his life. And I actually cut with a different temp track because I really wanted to have like the tempo and pacing, but we knew we didn't want it to feel like upbeat or happy in any way. So anyway, we cut originally to a temp track and then took it out and put in something way more sparse. And I think we just really wanted to make it feel also so cold compared to the beef. Obviously, the beef has its problems, but it's warm, it's alive. There is joy amidst all the chaos. And this place was just so sanitary and lonely, and it could not be more different from what we saw in the first episode.
And oh my God, Joel McHale, as we've never seen him before. Yikes.
I know. He's like basically unrecognizable. You're like, oh my gosh.
Completely.
He's so good.
What made you decide, Joanna, to submit the pilot episode for your Emmy consideration rather than one of the others? Is it because it just covered so many bases in introducing the characters?
Yeah, I mean, we spent a lot of time on the pilot just figuring out like what is the show, and we did a lot of work with trying to figure out the pace right from the beginning. Like originally, a lot of the first scenes in that episode were kind of segmented, and we went and we saw Carmi cook the beef, and then he went and sold the jeans, and then he went to go see Ballbreaker. And I remember showing a cut to Chris Storer, and he was like, "This is great. Like, it's 10-minute intro. Can we make it 3 minutes?" And I was like, that's an interesting and intense note. Let's try it. So that's what led to this montage that kind of kicks off the episode. Obviously, he's on the bridge with the bear, but then after that, it's so much intercutting. And we basically threw everything in there all at once to kind of just like establish this is our show. You're in or you're out. It's going to be crazy, but introducing Carmi taking over the business, family photos, Chicago as backstory. So it really was just like, okay, we're going to throw it all at you. Maybe you won't get everything at once, but this is the ride you're getting on. And then just adding a lot more to the characters throughout that episode and then throughout the season, and hopefully falling in love with all the people who make the beef what it is.
There was a lot of talk, I think, Joanna, about episode 7 and how it was filmed as the single unbroken 18-minute real-time shot. That had to be incredibly complex and difficult to pull off, but it worked beautifully in execution. What was it like to edit that?
Yeah, it's so great. I've gotten so much praise for working on that episode, and I'm like, I literally picked the right take and it was basically done. So I spent a lot of time on that first Chicago montage that actually was supposed to be in the pilot, and then we realized that the first episode should really be about Carmi, but by episode 7, we kind of had this love letter to Chicago to kick off the episode, and then we go into this one take. So what I did, because we really wanted to make sure we could pay off this pace that we've set up without cutting. So I spent a lot of time doing temp sound design. I think I had like 30 tracks of the production audio and then any sound you could possibly hear, the L train going by, the buzz of the fridge, things breaking, pots and pans, a sizzle from something in the corner. So it was cool to make sure that we could build up that intensity without being able to change the take. And they did a whole day rehearsing it, and they filmed it 5 times. We used take number 2. They just kind of nailed it out of the gate. And it's such a great point in the season because at the end of episode 6, everyone's gelling, they're getting along. This great John Mayer song is playing that just feels like, okay, maybe they can do this. And then episode 7, it just kind of all slowly falls apart. So it's sad to see them step back, but it's important to then see where we're going in the finale.
We're going to wrap things here in a second, Joanna, but just wanted to know, just how did it feel to work on a show that blew up like The Bear did? I'll bet that made you popular at family gatherings and cocktail parties. I mean, it just became so much part of the zeitgeist last summer.
Yeah, it's so great when you're working on something and you're like, I think this is pretty cool. I think people are going to like it. And then it comes out and it does break through that bubble and people are talking about it. And for so long, I would tell my friends, oh yeah, working on the show about a chef. And then it came out and everyone was like, wow, this is really, really cool. So now as we're doing season 2, there's a lot more interest from family members for spoilers and stuff. I'm like, you gotta wait, you gotta watch it. But it's just so great. And I love hearing everyone using Yes Chef in their normal life now too. Brought it into the lexicon.
We journalists write Yes Chef all the time too in our articles.
Okay,
We're always cribbing and borrowing.
awesome.
Joanna, good luck to you with the upcoming Emmys. The Bear is currently streaming the 8 episodes of season 1 and premieres its 10 episode second season on June 22nd. Thanks for joining us at Gold Derby.
Thank you so much for having me. This is great.